Maybe there is something in this numerology malarkey or superstition around numbers. After all, you couldn't really pick a worse date for Susan Ley, who put the extra S, the spelling of her name, for some daft superstitious belief in the power of numbers. You couldn't really pick a more inauspicious day for a leadership spill than Friday, February 13th, regarded by many as the unluckiest day of the year. So yes, it was definitely unlucky for Susan, with or without her extra S. Now, I'm no numerologist or indeed cephalogist, but I reckon the final numbers for Angus Taylor, he won 34-17, bode very well indeed. 34-17 is exactly 2-1. In other words, a clear 2/3 majority. This is essentially the same ratio, 2/3, that I've been saying for years is the natural Conservative majority of this country on virtually any issue you care to name. It was basically the majority that won the voice, 61-39. It is the same majority that regularly pops up in opinion polls in favour of things like Australia Day, only having one flag. Great to see all those 6 flags behind Angus Taylor at the press conference. The same majority against net zero, against welcomes to country, against excessive immigration, much higher than that, and so on. The problem, as I've repeatedly said, is that the Liberal Party tossed that Conservative majority out the window when it stupidly rolled Tony Abbott back on September the 14th, 2015. It is impossible to overestimate the damage that Malcolm Turnbull did to the Liberal Party, the damage Malcolm Turnbull did to the coalition, nor the damage Malcolm Turnbull did to this entire nation on that shameful day. Forget Friday falling on February 13th being a bad omen. In my book, whenever September 14th falls on a Monday, I remember the treachery of that miserable ghost Malcolm Turnbull, and I avoid walking near any sharp objects or under any ladders on that day. Needless to say, the man who was dubbed by my colleague Peter Credlin as Mr. Harbourside Mansion and hilariously dubbed by President Trump as Mr. Trumbull, Malcolm Turnbull was quick to give his opinion this morning on the latest leader of the Liberal Party.
A lot of people say about Angus Taylor is he is the best qualified idiot they've ever met.
What a disgrace. Why is Malcolm Turnbull still even in the Liberal Party? One of Angus Taylor's first things should be to boot him out publicly. Turnbull, get rid of him. Turnbull then went on to sprout this garbage on, of course, the ABC.
Is Angus Taylor the answer, though, to the Liberal Party's current set of problems?
No, he's absolutely not. No leader is. What they really need to do is move back to the centre. They've got to start talking about the economy and talking about it not just in bland, motherhood statements, lower taxes, less government, all that stuff. They've got to actually have some plans.
Yes, Malcolm, indeed they do, Mr. Turnbull Renewables. And the number one economic plan that the Liberals need to announce is an immediate end to all renewable subsidies on this continent, an immediate end to the so-called transition to renewables, and in keeping with Susan Lee's abandonment of net zero, complete the process and announce an immediate withdrawal when the Liberals win the next election from the Paris Agreement under a coalition government. Next, they need to commit to a moratorium on immigration. Those announcements alone will be the basis for the dramatic economic revival of this great nation of ours, along with a commitment to a root and branch audit of the NDIS to explain why suburbs like Lakemba, which have a very high migrant population, also appear to have an extraordinarily high volume of NDIS providers. So this Friday, February 13th, is either a bad omen for the Liberals or a very bad omen for this appalling Labor government and its woeful collection of undergraduate socialist ministers. I fervently hope and believe that this Friday the 13th will be remembered as a very, very bad day for Albo and his government. It will be a good omen for the Liberal Party. This is Angus Taylor in his maiden speech. This is the Angus that Australia needs to hear.
Madam Speaker, we must resist the insidious political correctness which would have us discard those core values which have made us great.
Absolutely.
In our times, the world over, the foundation of democracy, free speech, and the foundation of capitalism, property rights, is being chipped away by shrill elitist voices who insist they know what is best for people who are not remotely like them. I can tell you, Madam Speaker, I will always defend property rights and free speech. And in this place, I will back the Parliament over the executive and the judiciary, because it is through the Parliament that each of us here is accountable to our constituents.
Labor, you might have noticed, are clearly scared and spent the week showing their fear with their ridiculous and juvenile attempts to revive the class war and class envy by painting Angus Taylor as some kind of Chardonnay-sipping landed gentry or whatever. But the reality is that on the most important issue facing Australia, the economy, well, Labor and Jim Chalmers and Katie Gallagher have two of the most economically illiterate buffoons to have ever held those crucial portfolios. Angus understands money. Angus understands finances. Angus understands economics. Angus understands how to make Australia and Australians wealthy again. Angus Taylor's press conference this afternoon was superb. A bit too pally with the ABC and the lefty journeys for my liking, but there was this key moment and pledge on immigration.
We'll stand for an immigration policy that puts the interests of Australians first and puts Australian values at the centre of that policy. If someone doesn't subscribe to our core beliefs, the door must be shut. If someone was to import the hatred and violence of another place to Australia, the door must be shut.
That is crucial. Now, as I wrote this morning in The Spectator Australia, after missing by a whisker being shot in the head, Donald Trump's instinctive battle cry was to fight, fight, fight. Angus Taylor must now too fight, fight, fight. Fight the last vestiges of Turnbull-era liberalism, small L liberalism. Fight the destructive ideology of identity and climate politics. Above all, Angus Taylor must fight to dismantle, decimate and destroy the worst government in Australia's history. Angus Taylor must not flinch, he must not waver. As Tony Abbott has said, the next election can now be won. Mr Taylor's solid election victory, 60-40 win as I said, mirrors the last decent victory Australian Conservatives enjoyed, that of the Voice referendum. It is up to Mr Taylor to harness those Australians, harness that vote, work with the Nationals, his colleagues, and work with One Nation. Mr Taylor has already committed to deliver sound policies to slash immigration, slash spending, and destroy the climate change hoax. The fight is there to be won. The enemy is Labor. The role of the opposition is not to hold this Labor government to account. No. The job is to destroy it.